Do you have flat feet or fallen arches? And are you noticing that you're getting knee and lower back or foot or Achilles problems as you start to wear sandals or flip-flops or other maybe less supportive shoes or even going barefoot as the weather gets warmer? In today's video, that's exactly what I'm going to be talking about. We're going to talk about why you get flat feet, what the various kind of reasons that you get them are, what kind of problems they can cause, and then what we can do to help and what you can do on your own to feel better, even if you don't have ideal arches. So, hello, welcome back, or welcome. My name is Catherine. I'm the founder and principal therapist of LSM Clinic, a sport and remedial massage therapy clinic in East London. And in this channel, I share information about how the body works and simple self care tips that you can do to take care of yourself so that you can live as close to pain free as possible. Now, if you like this kind of content, I would absolutely love it if you would subscribe, like this video, share it with anyone who you might think it would be helpful for. So it really helps me get this information out there to more people. And if you do that, thanks so much for your support. So let's get into it. Arches, dropped arches, fallen arches. What are they? Where do they come from? What problems do they cause? And what can you do about it? So first of all, what is a dropped arch slash fallen arch slash flat foot? Now, a flat foot is just that you don't have an arch or you have a very, very small arch, depending on where you look and who you talk to. Now, the difference between being flat footed and having fallen arches is basically at what point this happens. If you have had flat feet your whole life, you've never had arches, it's not like they were there and then they went away, then you're flat footed. This could be genetic. Most likely, if you've had it your whole life, it's genetic. However, there is some theorizing that I personally ascribe to that says that because we don't have arches when we're babies, we need to be walking around in bare feet, maybe stocking feet, so that we can develop those arches, and that more people are getting flat arches because they're being put in shoes too early. I definitely let my kids run around barefoot as much as possible and kept them out of shoes as much as I could when they were younger. I think that helped develop their arches. Obviously, I can't be sure. But so if you've had flat feet basically your whole life, you'd be considered flat-footed. A fallen arch is when you did have an arch at one point, but then over time, your feet have gotten flatter and flatter, your arches have dropped. Now, what purpose does the arch serve, right? Why do we have it in the first place? The main purpose of the arch of our foot, and let me just clarify here because there's actually technically three arches, and I think I've seen someone say four, but generally it's accepted that there are three. There's one on the inside that goes front and back, one on the outside that goes front and back, and one that's called the transverse arch. For today's video, we're going to be talking about the medial arch, the arch that most of us think about when you think of the arch in your foot, right? So the one that goes from just behind the big toe knuckle inside the foot to the front of the heel. So the arch provides us shock, support, a springiness as we move through our gait. I mean, I always think feet are amazing because if you look at the size of most humans compared to the size of their feet, it's pretty incredible that our feet can carry our whole bodies around. And yes, of course, it has help from our pelvis and like our stability in our midsection. But still, that's pretty amazing. Like I don't think we've built many things that can do that. So that maybe robots. I don't know. That's a whole other rabbit hole I'm not going to go down. So if the purpose of the arch is to give us a spring, give us a movement through, give us some shock absorption, what happens when we don't have them? Well, some of the common problems that have been associated with fallen arches are plantar fasciitis, um, Achilles problems, various pains in the feet, and it can even be linked to, I don't know why I can't talk today. It can even be linked to knee pain and lower back. However, depending on where you look, because I always do a little bit of Googling just to kind of double check that the things that I know and practice, how it lines up with what like kind of generally other people are saying. Some people are like, it doesn't cause any problems at all. And it's true, like it could be one of those things that you could be fine with. However, when we work with clients who do have dropped arches or basically flat feet, the more that we can lift their arches and get some more support into the foot, it seems that that really helps the problems that they come to us with. So I would say that like if you don't have any problems, don't worry about it too much, but it's probably not a bad idea if you have some of these issues to look at the arches and see if you can help improve them. So what causes flat feet? Causes fallen arches? Well, I kind of say there are three and a half main causes. So let me explain why I say three and a half. So the first cause, genetic, it runs in the family. You may have been born with a certain joint structure in your feet. That means that you won't support an arch. Right? It's just something you're born with. That's genetic. That's one reason. Now, the second and third reasons have to do with muscles. And then the half reason is injury. So when I double checked, what do I say about the causes of arches? Like, this is what we see. A lot of people say, after an injury, you can have a fallen arch, after you break a bone, if you have certain surgeries. And I would say, absolutely, that's a reason. But I think it still links back to these two causes of either you have muscles that are tight and pulling on your arch or pulling your arch down, or you have muscles that aren't doing their job and they aren't supporting the arch. So that's reason two and three. And they usually happen together. It's not like either it's tight muscles or the muscles aren't doing their job. It's usually both together, and it just depends on the proportion of, which is which. So what do I mean by that? Let's talk first about the muscles that are pulling on it. So one of the really common things that we see, there are muscles that attach from the lower leg down into the foot. One of the really common ones that causes the arch to fall is the peroneus longus, I want to say. I should have double checked that before I made this video. I'll make sure I check and put the right one in the picture. Basically, there's two peroneals, and one of them attaches along the outside of the foot, and one of them attaches into the arch. And so the one that attaches into the arch, we often find that when it's tight, because it goes under the foot into the arch, as you can see in this picture over here, um, it will pull the arch down. And we know this because when we release the peroneals, the arch comes up, the arch becomes lifted. Now, I will save all of the stuff that you can do at the end, right? So it's all in one place. Because I was about to say what you can do about that, but I'll leave that for the last section of the video. So that's one of the muscles. Also, we can get tissue muscle in the bottom of the foot that's pulling the arch down. Now, it's a combination usually of like the attachment point of the tibialis posterior and some of the plantar fascia. It just kind of feels like a knobbly bit of tension at the front of the heel, back of the arch. Now, this is one of our favorite releases to do in the clinic because it can affect the knee, it can affect the hip. When we were practicing this technique, because we do practical trainings with the team, and I wanted to do that for July because this is our theme, right? Is working on the feet. One of the therapists got up after we'd released the arch, this spot, and they felt their shoulder dropped and relaxed on that side. So it has far-reaching implications, this particular spot. But what we find is that when we release this muscle, people feel that their arch is lifted, and visibly we can see that it's lifted, as well as they feel like they have better contact with their ground. So it's one of our favorite ones to do with people who spend a lot of time on their feet, who are runners, or who just like walk around and kind of notice that they feel a bit heavy or that their contact isn't great or have foot pain. So those are the main muscles that we find that are tight and pulling down on the arch. Now, for the muscles that aren't doing their job, if you've seen any of my videos, you can guess what's coming next. Glute activation is a factor. And not just in the way that you think, probably. So I'm always going on and on about how glute activation is really important for your pelvis. It helps to stabilize you, and that absolutely will help reduce the amount of pressure and force and how much your body has to work when you are moving through your feet, when you're walking. However, the glutes also have a connection that seems very direct to the arches, and you can actually test this for yourself. So if you stand up and you have your feet hip width apart, and you activate your glutes, which the way I describe it is like imagining that there's a penny between your butt cheeks and you're squeezing it together. And the reason I say that is because a lot of people, when they activate their glutes, they actually tilt their pelvis under, which is more using the hamstrings. But if you do that glute activation, and if you need more details about glute activation, I have a whole playlist that I will link in the description below. But if you activate your glutes, I would say a good 70 to 75% of the people that we try this on feel their arches lift. Now, you do need to be doing this barefoot for you to be able to feel it. But when your glutes aren't active, they're not supporting you. That will be a factor in your arches falling. So working on your glute activation doesn't just help your pelvic stability and take some of the pressure off through your legs and reduce how much your quad muscles and your thigh muscles are overworking. It can also help lift your arches, which is obviously going to be great when you're trying to improve the shape of the arch when you're working on it. Then we have smaller muscles in the feet, which are referred to as the intrinsic foot muscles. And I'll link below with like a description of them because there's a few different ones. But basically, the intrinsic muscles go inside the foot. So the ones that cross from the lower leg into the foot are not intrinsic because they aren't staying within the foot. And they're very important for supporting the arch and keeping the arch lifted. And what we find is that a lot of people don't have these active. I think a lot of people would agree with me that it's because often we're wearing shoes with a lot of support. So our muscles are kind of like, well, I don't need to work because the shoe's supporting me. And our body likes to be efficient. And so if the muscle doesn't need to be used, it switches off. And then when we switch into something that doesn't have that support, we have a problem, right? Because we haven't been using those muscles. So those are two examples of muscles not doing their job. Okay, so let's talk about what we do, what you can do to help them. Now, just a little side note, at the beginning, I said it's genetics, muscles that are too tight and muscles that aren't doing their job. Whereas I would never tell someone who genetically has flat feet that we can give them arches because we probably can't. We have worked with people who have flat feet using the principles of tight muscles and underworked, underused muscles to improve the shape of the foot and to give them better support. Sometimes we get a tiny bit of an arch, like the inside isn't like collapsed down and it's lifted a little. But that's not really our goal. Our goal is to try and get structural improvement in the foot so that they have better shock absorption through the foot with doing these techniques. So that's all to say that if you do have really flat feet and you don't know if something can help, whereas it won't fix it, like it won't give you arches, it could definitely help you feel better in walking around and moving around. Finally, what we do slash what you can do. Now, most of the stuff that you definitely can do on your own. There are a couple of things that I would recommend having someone do because they are a little bit like you can overdo them and then end up making things tighter. So, obviously, glute activation. Like I said, if you want help with glute activation, I have a whole playlist. You can do knee lifts. You can tap your glutes, make sure they're activating, like work it into your day-to-day life. You definitely want to have that going not just for your feet, but for your whole body, right? You can also do foam rolling on the peroneals. We have a free foam rolling workshop on our website in our runners resources page. I'll put a link below for that. It takes you through how you can painlessly and effectively foam roll and how you can test it. And that is the technique that we recommend using on the peroneals because they attach across the side of the ankle. That's a very hard muscle to stretch. It's theoretically possible to stretch it, but I think foam rolling is much easier. And I believe the foam rolling video gives you some tips on what to do if you don't have a foam roller, like some substitutions you can use. For the release in the foot, that is one that I don't recommend people do because it's really common that if you have plantar fasciitis or other problems in the foot that people say, just take a tennis ball or a cricket ball or a golf ball and just rub your foot on it. And unfortunately, if you do that and you do it too hard, then you will actually make it worse. You can get like a really stiff and tight muscle and tissue because it's pushing against it. You can bruise the tissue. So I would say ideally, like see someone who can do that for you. See us if we are in London, or have someone walk through with you how you can know when it's too much so you get that right balance. If you have plantar fasciitis, be especially careful with this because there's probably already irritation on the bottom of the foot. And if you want to learn more about how we can help plantar fasciitis, including the case study that we have where we're working with people to build a portfolio of how we've helped people with plantar fasciitis, and we've had really good results so far with the handful of people who've gone through it. I'll include the link about our plantar fasciitis case study below. So just be careful with that one. There is also another release that we do in the clinic at the base of the fifth metatarsal. This isn't exactly flat foot, but it can be an aggravating factor for flat foot, where if you've ever noticed that your ankles are kind of inside of your feet, it's almost like the ankles have like migrated. We find that releasing that in a specific way can help shift that back. But those are the two releases that I would say maybe get help with before you try them on your own. Now, as far as exercises, there are two exercises that you can do. One of them is I call frog toes, and the other is piano toes. Now, I have searched to try and find some examples that I can link in the video below. I've seen some close ones, so if I can find good examples, I will link them because I know it's easier if you can see them. But basically, frog toes, you spread your toes and you lift them, spread them out, and let's say this is the ground and this is your foot. And then you put your toes down and you push. And the reason it's frog toes is because you're trying not to scrunch your feet. You want to keep them like this. And if you push down your toes without scrunching, then you'll be using the muscles in the foot to support the arch. If you scrunch them, you might feel that in the back of your lower leg that you're activating those muscles, which we don't really want to do because those muscles tend to already be tight. But you can just do that a few seconds, a couple of times a day. And spreading the toes might be hard, especially that big toe. Um, so just practice easy. And even if you just practice pushing your toes in without scrunching your toes, right? Even if you don't really push very hard, because that can be very tricky because your brain goes, oh, you want to squeeze the toes. I know which muscles to use. And it will go to the ones that it has a good connection with in your lower leg and try to overrun it. And again, we are absolutely happy to show you that in a session if you come and see us. The other one's piano toes. Piano toes is actually very, very tricky. So don't worry if you can't do it. I'll tell you like a way that you can ease yourself in. But the ideal is with piano toes, you lift all your toes up and you spread them. And then one by one, you put your you put your toe down. And then one by one, you lift it up. So it's like playing a piano. And that is very difficult to do if you're not used to controlling your toes like that. So what you can do is you can start by holding your toes, spreading them, and then putting them down one by one and then lifting them up one by one with your hand. And then you can do the same thing again with your like you hold them up and then you let go of the toe and then you have the toe put itself down and then you push all the toes down and then you let each toe come up one by one. Again, if I can find a good video for that, I will. But we can also show you in session and I can actually, I was going to say I can make a video with describing the exercises, but I find those really difficult to make. I'm sorry, but I will try to find something that shows it. And if not, just follow my finger. Follow my finger example. I'm sorry. Okay, so that is why you can have dropped arches, what problems they cause, which again, plantar fasciitis, Achilles problem, knee pain, lower back pain, the causes for it, and then what you can do to help it. I've put a lot of resources in the description, so please feel free to check those out, or I will put, because I'm putting this down, so I'll do it later. And the next video in 2 weeks is going to be Are Flip-Flops Bad for You? Which it turns out, my opinion might be more controversial than I thought it was. But I'll leave you now. And thanks so much for watching. And again, if you like it, It will help so much if you like this video, subscribe, share it with people who might find it helpful. And if you want to be notified when I release new videos and when I share old ones and other self-care tips that I don't put in these videos, there's a subscription to the email list below in the description as well. So have a great day, and I will see you later.